welcome in to Road to the Rate. I'm Connor McKnight. This is the man who invented the podcast, Paul Janish, the Director of Player Development for the White Sox. This is the show that focuses on player dev all over the organization, which means we got a lot to talk about, Paul, because this season coming in, there's a lot of new faces in the Major League clubhouse, a lot of new faces in the minor league clubhouse, and you are in, I think year 3 here with the White Sox. So first question for you. What did you learn last year that you've put into place to work with and kind of change the process a little bit? Because every year brings new things. What was last year instructive about for you guys?
Yeah, first of all, it's great to be here in spring training. A lot of optimism, obviously, momentum going into this year. But, the thing I would highlight is, at least on our side in player development, the thing you got to remember and what continues to present itself is you just can't make decisions on guys and be tied to them in the sense of you got to remember they can get better. And so one of the things we focus on our side is really the concept of having a positive narrative and focusing on what guys can do versus being lost in what they maybe can't do or aren't quite good enough at yet, and just their lane to get to the major league level and add value. So my takeaway from last year is just to remember that they can get better.
It's interesting on the hitting side of things. As you're talking about that, I'm thinking about two guys. Braden Montgomery and Caleb Bonemer, two of the top hitting prospects in the system. Caleb's got a year where he just rakes all the way through as a 19-year-old shortstop in A-ball. And Braden obviously had a very good season, but every time he moved up, there was like 2, maybe 3 weeks where he had to adjust and struggle a little bit, then demolished, then moved up and then struggled a little bit and then demolished. Like, there's positives to take out of obviously both of those things, but different ways to get there.
Yeah, so first of all, to highlight both of those guys, they're just supremely talented. I think we can agree on that. To do what Caleb did in his first full season as a high school draft pick, I think just really speaks to the competitiveness and just the pure talent that he's got. And Braden, too, albeit that he went to college, it was still his first full season. And I think, what you highlighted, some of the relative adversity that he dealt with and the ability to pull himself out of that just speaks to kind of his grit, stick-to-itiveness that he has. And and both of those guys, they're very well thought of. We think they're both going to be Major League Baseball players that are going to be really good for a long period of time. But the thing I would point to, and I share this with both of them, is that just their work ethic, the way they go about their business, selfishly for us as a staff, is so beneficial because we can point to those guys, to anybody in the organization, and say, look, this is who we are and this is how we do it.
You guys have made some changes in the staff throughout the minor leagues. Some familiar faces again, but new positions, new places. The rubber has hit the road here in spring training. We're a couple weeks in. How have the adjustments gone with some of those new guys working with new players? How have some of the new coaches kind of fit in and adjusted what they do, how you guys do it to help out these young kids making their moves?
Yeah, the word that comes to mind, in professional sports, there's always going to be turnover to some degree, and that's just something that you get accustomed to. But the word that comes to mind is alignment. That we, as much as we've had since I've been here, is on both sides, every facet of the game. I think we have as much alignment as we've ever had. I personally, and we as an organization, I think place a lot of value on the people, and content's great, and I think we have really good content, but I feel really strongly about the people that we brought in, and I would encourage anybody, Connor yourself, to come hang out in the minor league coaches locker room when you get a chance, because for lack of a better term, we got good vibes over there.
Well, so let me ask this too, people hear alignment, right? And I think the worry on one side, because baseball fans, if nothing, we're great at worrying. You hear kind of groupthink, right? But I know for a fact that new ideas get brought up. So how does that alignment help, bring some of those new ideas out? I would imagine it makes it more comfortable for somebody to say, hey, what if we tried this if everything else kind of feels tight?
Yeah, and so I think that for me personally, one of the most important things is that everybody in the room has the comfort level to say what they think out loud. Yeah. Especially when we're talking as a coaching staff, as a player development staff, we have really good conversations, and I don't care if it's your first year in a professional locker room as a coach or, Doug Sisson, who's just the encyclopedia of baseball. Anybody in that room feels comfortable sharing their opinion, getting good ideas out there, and then now we're going to come to a decision. Hard decisions have to be made. We're going to come to a decision, and when we go out to present it to the players, we're going to have a unified front. But that go back to the point of just having really good people in the room, and I think really that's what we're experiencing on the PD side specifically, and I think the players feel it.
I think one of the things as White Sox fans kind of look at the player development side, one of the things is probably the easiest for them to access and most innovative things they saw were the approaches to both Hagen Smith and Colson Montgomery last season in taking them out of competition a little bit, addressing what needed to be done, and then throwing them back into the fire and seeing good results. How has that, now that we're, 6 months, 8 months removed from that, how has that affected some of the coaches and their plans for players? Is that in the back of mind that, hey, we can get kind of off the grid here in how we approach players if we need to?
Yeah, 100%. I think those two guys are great examples, and obviously highly talented players that, again, Colson doing what he did at the major league level for the second half of the season was just so impressive in so many different ways. Hagen is, hopefully assuming health is going to get his chance to add value to the major league level this year. But I think really it goes back to saying that, something similar in the sense that, look, we're okay with trying something outside the box. And again, it goes back to saying, if you have an idea, share it with us. Now, whether or not we implement it, we can all make that decision. But I think I give Getsy a ton of credit, and the front office a ton of credit for being on board with that, and giving us the opportunity and the leash, so to speak, to say, hey, you guys see him, feel him, touch him every single day. If you guys got a gut feeling, if you think something might work, let's talk about it, and then let's try it.
Chad Pinder's going to have a lot of interesting players coming up through AAA this year. You guys have spoken very highly of him to the point where, both you and Chris have said, listen, at some point we may lose Chad Pinder to a big league job here, and that'll be great for him. But what does that say? What does Chad do so well when it comes to getting players in the right spots to succeed?
Yeah, I think any of the players that have played for him, whether it was in Kannapolis or in the fall league last year, he wasn't the manager in the fall league, but our players that were with him, the best quality is that he just cares, right? Yeah. He cares about the players. He cares about the game and doing it the right way. He has the benefit of having played recently. So from a terminology standpoint, from a communication standpoint, he can accomplish some of those things that, somebody who's a little bit more removed from the game might not be able to. But at the end of the day, the guy cares. He's a great communicator. And, the way I say about Chad is if he does make a mistake, the first person he's going to point to is himself. And that just goes such a long way, whether it's with staff, whether it's with players. People just have so much respect for Chad. I think he's going to do a great job this year.
How much planning has gone on at this point about some of the, because at the minor league level, yes, it's about development and you want to win games, but you got to manage innings limits and guys coming back from injury and all this other stuff that you might not have to do at the big league level. You guys will have a lot of arms coming off of injuries at some point in the middle of summer. How much planning goes into that a few months from now at this point here in spring?
Yeah, I think it's just we're going to benefit from it because
right.
we have some guys that we think highly of, not just from a player development minor league side, some guys that we think are going to contribute to the major league level that are going to get healthy, throughout the season. So we just look at it as a benefit. What I will say is what we will try to be really diligent with is just making sure those guys are in a good spot. Whether we're talking about Mason Adams, Juan Corella, Kai Bush, Prelander Baroa, yeah. Any of those guys, I think we just got to make sure that they're feeling good, they're doing a good job, they're being diligent with their work and the rehab process, but just making sure that they're ready to go when we kind of are ready to hit play for them. But yeah, we're just going to benefit from that this year, and whether we like it or not, injuries are part of the game, and I give those guys credit because the rehab process can be arduous, and they all have done a really good job.
I want to touch on a couple of names here. Every player development guy's favorite part, right? I mention a name and you take me through it a little bit. Fans love it, and I think it's a worthwhile exercise.
What could go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? You mentioned Caleb Bonemer already, and full disclosure, as Paul and I talked, this is the morning of the very first game at Camelback Ranch for the White Sox. The Sox beat the Cubs yesterday, so as you kind of anchor yourself in time here, that's where we are. Our interview with Caleb Bonemer will come out in a little bit. Caleb had such a great season last year. Defensively, what was the work like for him this winter? What will the focus be defensively for him coming up this season?
Yeah, and we've shared this with Caleb. I give him so much credit because I tell our players all the time that we want you to be part of the conversation. It's not us telling you necessarily what you're going to do. It's you being part of helping us decide what's best and how to make him most comfortable. But he'll stay on the dirt this year, obviously. He's probably going to lean a little bit more towards third base. He'll still play some shortstop this year. Because we believe that that's best for his development at this juncture in time. He's just such a good athlete, man. Like I just think that we haven't quite figured out exactly what the path might be. What I do know is that offensively his bat is going to carry him. But to give him credit in the work ethic, on the defensive side of the ball, he works his butt off, and like whether it's third base, shortstop, second base, whatever it ends up being long term, there's no question in my mind that Caleb's going to get the most out of what he can do.
We talked to David Sandlin a little bit on the podcast. That's coming out some. He and I did nerd out about Star Wars pretty hardcore for 20 minutes or so.
For the record, today's his birthday.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Happy birthday, David Sandlin. That's
right.
fantastic. May the force be with you. That's an interesting arm. And a guy that you guys bring. Two-parter here. What do you like most about what he's shown you so far? And secondly, like, as a player like that gets brought in trade, at that point, kind of late in the winter, when and how does player dev kind of get their hands on him, start working with things, and get your input on the move as well?
Yeah, so he's a unique example getting traded. He was already at the AAA level to finish last season. He's kind of on the cusp, hopefully, assuming health of contributing at the major league level. So, that's a little bit of a joint force with the major league staff, right? With Brian Bannister obviously on the pitching side and developing a development plan for him specifically to what we think he can be and what he can do, and obviously promoting health and all the stuff, making sure he's ready to go. But I think for him, it's a unique situation when you get traded. You don't know what to do. It's his first time to change organizations, but I don't think there's any other way, based on my interaction with him, that he's looking at it other than an opportunity, right? And that's what he has here, and what the future holds, we'll see. But he is super talented, and he is going to get an opportunity to help the major league team this year, hopefully.
Cerebral is a word that gets thrown around a lot, but he looks like a guy who really went after his approach against left-handers with a real purpose in this winter, and I have to figure that that's something you guys want to see him continue and be effective with the splits that he showed last year.
Yeah, and I think anybody would tell you, at the major league level, you're going to get even more from a lineup optimization standpoint. Teams are going to target that, right?
Yeah.
And be better suited than they've ever been at the minor league level to execute that. So 100%, that's going to be part of the equation for him. And he's shown up to this point the diligence to really focus on it, and hopefully we can help him with arsenal, repertoire, et cetera, with regards to how to game plan against those guys.
Let's talk about Noah Schultz a little bit. Obviously a season for him that kind of was well, I don't want to characterize it the wrong way, but obviously the knee was an issue for him throughout a bulk of his work. What was it like to have to, kind of talk him through some of those issues, understand the back and forth between those health issues, and how much do you think that contributed to, or how much behind him is that so that he can move forward in the way that we all know he can?
Yeah, I think it's just another piece of the development curve, right? He wasn't feeling optimal last year for a lot of the year. He wasn't totally forthcoming with that. We've talked about it, and I give him so much credit because he wanted to push through it. He wanted to compete. He wanted to go out there and perform. He did not make an excuse one time. It's again, I think we're going to look back at last year for him specifically and point to it as a development opportunity that while the product on the field wasn't what he wanted, it still there was growth there. And looking at him this year in spring training, and just physically, he just looks good, right? Like he's in great shape. He's throwing the ball well. Again, he knows he's going to have to go out and execute, in particular at the major league level. But that's what we hope for him. Hopefully he'll stay healthy through spring training, get off to a good start this year, and at some point this year be able to help the major league team.
For him and Hagen Smith, both your two top arms, your two closest and top arms in the system. How much do you guys weigh, along with Brian Bannister, their opportunities when they come, to either throw out of the bullpen for the White Sox at that big league level versus we want it to be starts, let's see where those innings are at kind of thing? Obviously, that's a good problem, and a couple of months down the line, but it has to be something that's on your mind at this point.
Yeah, I think the way we look at it is we prepare those guys to get built up and to be a starter. That's what, assuming that they're in the minor leagues, that's what they're going to do. We want them to be as prepared as they can be to do that. What the role ends up being at the major league level, i.e. a Grant Taylor last year where he gets put into the bullpen in a high leverage situation, right? Could that happen with any of those guys? Sure. But from our perspective, we're trying to get them as ready as they can be to start with the hopes that they get that opportunity. And, at the end of the day, the role that they get put into at the major league level is kind of to be determined at this point.
How is the role of player development work with Rule 5 picks? It's weird, like they're on the major league roster until they're not, and then they might be going back or they might be coming back to you. It's like this weird nebulous range, and I wonder how you kind of interact with guys like Jedickson Paez and Alberto a little bit, because those two are very different pitchers. in their scope of career than Shane Smith was when he came over from the Brewers last year.
Yeah, no, the context for those examples are different, and really what they get put into the major league clubhouse. We do correspond with the organization that they came from to try to get some of the scouting reports, so to speak, on best ways to handle them. What resonates with them, things of that nature. But give those kids a lot of credit. They're both fairly young. They're in a major league spring training for the first time. There's a lot getting thrown at them. They've handled themselves very well. I give Will Venable and the major league staff a ton of credit because they've been very intentional with wanting to make sure those guys know, hey, just go do you. We're not asking you to do anything tomorrow. We're asking you to get as ready as you can be for the major league season and be who you are. So again, I give the major league staff a ton of credit with those guys.
Have you guys had a little bit more, if input's not the right word, you fill it in, but more something with those two because of their age and experience?
It has been collaborative in the sense of, because we played against those guys with our affiliates. Right. So we do have some background on them, but it is a collaborative effort, but at the end of the day, for the most part, those guys are dealing with the major league staff at this point.
Are you ready now? Like if you had to, can you assign the minor league affiliates for all of these young players? Like, are they out the door? Like, if you had to go out the door now, where Caleb's going, where Hagen's going, all these kind of things, or is there still a lot to be determined?
You sound like an agent right now.
You know what I'm doing.
No, we take spring training as an opportunity to see that. Do we know where some guys are going? Absolutely, yes, we do. One of the biggest things to take into consideration with those assignments is it really is about the players, right? Like where they're best suited to go to hopefully have success. There are some needs that we have to obviously address with regards to rosters and making sure we can fill the lineup everywhere. But there is a lot that goes into it. What I will share is that we include the entire staff.
Yeah,
we really do, because there's just so many guys, whether it's the hitting guys or the defensive guys or the pitcher, all of the pitching group. We do collaborate a lot on what we think makes the most sense, just because it's not up to one person, in my opinion. I think that's one thing we do a good job of, is including everybody in some of those decisions.
One of the things you mentioned, positionality, and that's something that I think a lot of fans need to think about as it comes to filling out all of those minor league rosters. One of the things that you guys are a little light on in the organization are first basemen who play a lot of first. How do you see that position working throughout the levels and the kinds of guys and players that will fill in those spots throughout the organization?
Yeah, I think that's really just a product of, from the acquisition process of really wanting to be as versatile as you can be. At the major league level, if you look around the league, a lot of current first basemen were, whether it's a former outfielder or a former third baseman or whatever the case might be, just inherently because they're really good athletes. Now, I could point to a Tim Elko or a Ryan Galaney who have come through the organization here recently and had success, and hopefully we'll have the opportunity again to contribute at the major league level. But I think really it's just a product of trying to be as athletic and as versatile as we can be. And we have guys, most of our affiliates, the guy that plays first can also play a corner outfield position or catch. So that's by design. But it's a better problem than not having enough shortstops, which I think at this point we're starting to stack up. So we'll figure first base out.
With maybe more shortstops to come, but that's neither here nor there. Last one for you. I wonder this. Last season, I'm thinking of Colson, right? The carrots at the end of the stick. He knows that if he has a good spring, he had the back injury, of course, but he knows he had the good spring, major league, breaking camp with the big league team was a real possibility. That's obviously the biggest carrot you can put out there for anybody who hasn't made the bigs yet. How much is, let's use Caleb, for example, right? Hey, Caleb, a great spring gets you to AAA out the box. How big relatively is that carrot, getting up that next level that maybe you didn't see last year, or maybe you just got a taste of last year, and maybe you go, it's 3 weeks from AA, then AAA for you?
Yeah, one thing I try to highlight is to our guys is not to worry about getting to a certain level, right? Like what we try to really emphasize is, look, the product on the field is going to be the product on the field regardless of what uniform you're wearing. So at the end of the day, the goal is to get to Chicago. And I think, a subtle but profound implication here is it's really not to get to Chicago. It's to get to Chicago and help the team win. So whether we're talking about somebody who was in Winston-Salem last year that really wants to go to Birmingham, or Birmingham that really wants to go to Charlotte, really what we try to emphasize, and it's easy to say and hard to do, but is regardless of your uniform, the player that's going to show up is the same. And hopefully that's going to be somebody that can help add value to Chicago at some point down the road.
Paul, Appreciate it as always. Best of luck through the rest of spring. Everybody's going to stay healthy. Here's hoping. We'll knock on all the wood.
That's right. Think lucky, be lucky.
Right, there you go. And look forward to seeing as many as we can in Chicago this summer.
That's right, Connor. Thank you.
You got it. This is Road to the Rate with Paul Janish, the Director of Player Development for the White Sox. Lots more to come this spring with a lot of big names on the pod. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.